talk this through with you because it's important to appreciate what happened when, and I understand that. Obviously, the diplomatic post of American ambassador, really important post, and Peter Mandelson, before he was appointed, went through a due diligence process. That's the propriety and ethics team went through a process, and therefore I knew of his association with Epstein. But had I known then what I know now, I'd have never appointed him. Because what emerged last week were emails, Bloomberg emails, which showed that the nature and extent of the relationship that Peter Mandelson had with Epstein was far different to what I had understood to be the position when I appointed him. On top of that, what the email showed was he was not only questioning, but wanting to challenge the conviction of Epstein at the time. That, for me, went and cut across the whole approach that I've taken on violence against women and girls for many years, and this government's approach. On top of that, what emerged last week, on Wednesday evening late, were Peter Mandelson's responses to questions that have been put to him by government officials. I looked at those responses and I did not find them at all satisfying. And therefore, on the basis of those three things, the nature and extent of the relationship being far different to what I'd understood to be the position at the point of appointment, the questioning and challenging of the conviction, which, as I say, goes to the heart and cuts across what this government is doing on violence against women and girls, and the unsatisfactory nature of the responses from Peter Mandelson last week to the inquiries that made of him by government officials, I took the decision to remove him.
You said that details emerged Wednesday afternoon, but from what we can work out, details were furnished to bits of the Whitehall machinery, the Foreign Office and Downing Street, quite a bit ahead of you defending Peter Mandelson on Wednesday at Prime Minister's questions. And people are scratching their heads saying, why didn't you, the Prime Minister, make more effort to make sure you were briefed on this? Were people briefing you properly? Were they acting on your behalf? Were they acting slightly on Peter Mandelson's behalf, maybe? Bits of the machine.
Well, let me deal with that, because it was only on Wednesday early evening that I knew the contents of the Bloomberg emails. It was only very late on Wednesday when Peter Mandelson replied to the questions that had been put to him by government officials, and it was on that basis that I took my decision that he should be removed. What I knew before PMQs was that there had been media inquiries. I didn't know the content of the Bloomberg emails, and I knew that questions had been put to Peter that he had not yet answered, and he hadn't answered them by the time it got to PMQs. There is, of course, a time lag in America, but I knew that there are questions that have been put to him, but I didn't know what answers he was going to give to those questions. That came later on Wednesday. And that's why, at that point, I gave the answer I did at PMQs, and that's the extent of what I knew at the time.
Now the plot thickens for the Prime Minister, because now Sir Keir Starmer says he wouldn't have appointed Peter Mandelson as the UK's ambassador to the United States if he'd known then what he knows now.
Peter Mandelson, before he was appointed, went through a due diligence process. That's the propriety and ethics team went through a process, and therefore I knew of his association with Epstein. But had I known then what I know now, I'd have never appointed him. Because what emerged last week were emails, Bloomberg emails, which showed that the nature and extent of the relationship that Peter Mandelson had with Epstein was far different to what I had understood to be the position when I appointed him.
Now, of course, the Prime Minister sacked Mr Mandelson last Thursday over his links to the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, less than 24 hours after he'd told the House of Commons that he had full confidence in Peter Mandelson. It's an astonishing plot, and it thickens by the moment. Let's get more reaction now from GB News' political correspondent Olivia Utley, who joins me in the studio in Westminster. Olivia Utley, here we go again. Yet more chaos at the heart of government. Last week, Rumours were awash everywhere. There was much more to come out about Peter Mandelson's tangled and colourful heritage and history with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. And yet, Sir Keir Starmer backed into the hilt at PMQs today, saying, well, if I'd known now what I knew then, I wouldn't have hired him. This screams of incompetence. And actually, starting to feel now, he might be handling a hospital tackle to maybe one of his top team. Could Morgan McSweeney be the one to go under the bus next?
Well, Keir Starmer is certainly in a very, very sticky situation. There are, of course, big questions over why Lord Mandelson was appointed as US ambassador in the first place when his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein was publicly known. As you just heard there, Keir Starmer says that he had no idea of the extent of Mandelson's relationship with Epstein. I think the more pertinent question, in as far as the future of Keir Starmer goes, is the exact timeline of what happened last week. So what happened, and we've spoken to the Prime Minister's spokesman this morning, is on Tuesday, the Foreign Office said that it was launching an investigation into the relationship between Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein off the back of a cache of damaging emails which had been handed to the Cabinet Office. Now, on Wednesday morning, after that investigation had been launched on Tuesday, on Wednesday morning, Lord Mandelson did an interview with The Sun, with Murdoch, essentially saying that there were more embarrassing details which were going to come to light in the following few days.
And that's before PMQs.
That was at 7 a.m. on Wednesday morning. At 12 o'clock midday, Keir Starmer stood up in the House of Commons. Kemi Badenoch used all 6 of her questions to ask about Peter Mandelson. And at that point, Keir Starmer was defending the US ambassador to the hilt. Now, on Thursday, having reviewed that cache of emails on Wednesday night, Keir Starmer made the decision to sack Jeffrey Epstein. Now, the crux of the question facing Keir Starmer at the moment, which we're yet really to hear an adequate answer to, is why, when the Foreign Office was actively investigating the US ambassador on Tuesday evening, and when the US ambassador himself had said on Wednesday morning that there were embarrassing details which were to come to light, why did the Prime Minister defend him to the hilt on Wednesday? Now, the answer that we've got from the Prime Minister himself this afternoon and from a spokesman this morning is that although he knew of the existence of this cache of emails, he didn't know exactly what was in them. That brings us to, well, why not? Is it that someone in number 10 failed to pass over these emails? Was it that one of his advisors didn't think it was important enough to pass on to the Prime Minister? If so, again, why? Why did the number 10 operation not realise that this was very, very important? Is this a case of massive, massive comms failure? Is it that one of the advisors around Keir Starmer, perhaps his own Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, is essentially to blame with this? Although, of course, you could say that the buck eventually stops with the Prime Minister anyway. Or was it just a huge political misstep of Keir Starmer's not to concentrate on this issue on Tuesday night and Wednesday morning when it was so obvious to most of the rest of Westminster that Peter Mandelson's position was unsustainable? Either way, it took 48 hours from that briefing being received by the Foreign Office for Keir Starmer to get rid of Peter Mandelson. Why is that? It's
an astonishing situation. Bedlam again in Downing Street. Thank you very much, Olivia Utley. Let's move on and joined by my next guest, and that's the political advisor and the author, Stuart Thompson. Stuart, welcome to the show. I'll tell you what I'd do if I was hiring Jeffrey Epstein, if I was hiring Peter Mandelson, beg your pardon, who's got a well-known relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. I'd say, go and find the worst thing you could possibly find, which is going to go public at some point, and let me know what that is, and I'll make the basis of my decision on that. Why wouldn't the Prime Minister do a basic thing like that?
Well, it appears that Peter Mandelson did go through that sort of process, and it was only slightly later, as the Prime Minister has talked about today, that that cache of emails came to his knowledge. As soon as he knew that, he took action and sacked Mandelson. Now, you know, there will be questions, of course, and they're right to be asked around the team and what the Prime Minister knew, but the Prime Minister has shown decisive action. As soon as he knew that depth of that relationship, he took action. And I think that's only to be applauded.
Stuart Thompson, the decisive action that Sir Keir Starmer keeps taking generally comes 1 or 2 days after giving the person in question his full confidence and full backing. Angela Rayner, he took decisive action on her, having called that one wrong. He took decisive action on Peter Mandelson, having called that one wrong. The buck has to stop somewhere. He can't throw his team under the bus.
Martin, what he has done is he has waited until he has the information rather than just reacting to whatever media stories are coming forward. When he has that information, he has shown he will take that decisive action, whether it's, as you say, whether it's Angela Rayner who resigned, whether that was with Peter Mandelson and other instances as well. He has shown that he's not afraid to take those decisions, but he's not going to take them on the basis of some media speculation. He will do that on the basis of actual fact. And I think
Thompson,
that shows a strong Prime Minister.
Stuart, with the greatest respect, it's not media speculation to talk about Jeffrey Epstein's relationship with Peter Mandelson. It's public knowledge. It has been for decades. And on the morning of Keir Starmer backing Mandy at PMQs, Mandelson himself had said more embarrassing revelations will yet emerge. At that point, why didn't the Prime Minister or somebody around him think, do you know what? It might not be the best idea to give Mandelson my full backing today on the floor in Parliament.
Well, I think the trouble is, as soon as you start doing that, as soon as there's a question mark beside any person that the Prime Minister is not in the employment of the Prime Minister, but you know what I mean, is that sort of relationship with a cabinet minister or Mandelson or anybody else. If that isn't completely wholehearted, there's a question mark beside them. And if that information about that depth of relationship then hadn't come forward, what would Mandelson, in his a role in the US, being able to do? He'd have been a busted flush. So, I think the Prime Minister is right in defending until that information comes through, and then he takes the action.
But also, Stuart Thompson, many people in the Labour Party had already warned Keir Starmer against making that hire, top of which was Lord Maurice Glassman. Look, the calamity continues. But thanks for joining us, giving us your expert opinion. Stuart Thompson, that's political advisor and author. Thanks for your time today on GB News.